Welcome to this episode of Wanderlust Solo Women Travel Unscripted. Real women, real stories, real journeys, and no filter. Join Gina, your host, to share the experiences and stories of solo female travelers and advocates from all over the world, with a mission to empower women of all ages, backgrounds, and life stages to embrace solo female travel with confidence and enthusiasm, while being authentic and real, unscripted. Confronting the challenges and apprehensions many women face when considering solo adventures, providing inspiration to break through those barriers. Sharing how life transitions, loss, and trauma can lead to amazing experiences, rediscovery, and life journeys. The good, the bad, and the ugly of authentic and honest travel. So let's throw out the script, get comfy, and jump right into this episode.
We welcome to this podcast Trista Guertin, a master coach dedicated to empowering women in midlife to break free from feeling stuck and overwhelmed. With a remarkable background spanning over 20 years of leadership experience, she brings a unique perspective shaped by her work as a humanitarian aid worker across 78 countries, including challenging regions like Angola, Sri Lanka, Yemen, Iraq, and Lebanon. As the creator of the Unstuck program, Trista has developed a transformative 12-week coaching journey that guides women to rebuild their self-relationship, unlock their potential, and create meaningful, sustainable life changes. Her approach blends compassionate insight with direct, no-nonsense guidance, helping clients cultivate clarity, self-trust, and confidence. Through her podcast, This Daring Adventure, and her coaching practice, Trista continues to inspire women to reclaim their energy, establish healthy boundaries, and courageously design the lives they truly want. When not empowering her clients, she can be found exploring the world or enjoying time with her dogs. So let's dive into this episode with Trista exploring her solo travel adventures. So I'm very excited to bring Trista to this episode, and Trista is coming to us all the way from Canada, so welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have. We've had women from all over the world. We've got a few Canadians, but you're our first so far, so I'm really excited to share your story.
Thank you.
You've got some amazing adventures you've had around the work you used to do, around humanitarian aid. And I see you travel to like 78 countries. Some of them we would never even imagine going to.
They're not on the list of too many people, that's for sure.
No, not the top tourist list. Do you just want to elaborate briefly around that work you did and why it took you to those countries?
Yeah. So I was a humanitarian aid worker, and I started back, it was 20 plus years ago. I did a master's degree in international development, and sort of just started from there, did some volunteer work with the United Nations in Angola and Kosovo and Sri Lanka, and just kept going and have worked with a number of organizations, primarily with refugee and displaced populations. And it took me to, like I said, Angola, Kosovo, Sri Lanka, but also to Yemen, Iraq. I spent many years in the Middle East, and then most recently it was 8 years in Lebanon. So it was great work. It was very challenging, very rewarding, but also very difficult, emotionally and physically and mentally and all the things. But yeah, it's good work. I was really honored to be able to do that work.
Yeah, and you touched on the emotional and mental toll it took on you. And so when you went to seek out time out for yourself, like your solo adventures and holidays, it was for a different reason, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, that was sort of our rest and recuperation. So it depended on where I was, but obviously, if I was getting out of Yemen or I was getting out of Iraq or Angola, then yes, I wanted to go have something very quiet, very restful. Probably ideally in a beach somewhere that I could just sort of sit and enjoy the peace and quiet. But the food was also a very important component. I really, because those places, the options were so limited and we, weren't able to go out for dinner and do things like that. So the food was a central preoccupation, of course, and then good wine and beauty treatments, getting like my nails, my hair done and all that. But yeah, it was definitely, I definitely tailored my destinations based on peace and quiet and the food.
Yeah. Do you think because of your work, did it change the way you viewed travel at all? Like, did it impact, you think, good or bad, on the way you viewed travel in general?
Oh, I mean, I've been asked that question a few times and I'm never quite sure. I definitely think it made me more adventurous. I think it definitely made me a solo traveler because being in these places that I had more vacation time than my friends and family most of the time. So by necessity, I would go off by myself. And at first I was sort of like a little unsure about that, but now I just love it and I prefer it, to be honest. So it definitely made me a solo traveler. And I think it definitely made me a little bit more adventurous. Whereas before, I think, I would have just stayed in Europe and I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, but now I have this list of places that I want to go that, yeah, most people probably wouldn't want to go.
And that's what I'm saying. Did it make you more confident as a
Yes.
traveler? Yeah,
Yes.
because many people have misconceptions about different countries, but because you'd had quite a varied experience in different countries, do you think it built a certain confidence in you to be more
Yeah,
aware and enjoy a place more and relax more than maybe some other people would?
exactly. Yes. And I think it did sort of develop that sort of comfort level in me. I remember now, this is going back also probably 10, 12 years ago, but I met up with some friends actually one summer in Spain, and I saw that we could take the ferry across to Tangier and into Morocco. And I thought, oh, we have to do that. Like, even just for a night or two, we have to take, like, if I can go to another country, I'm going to another country. And we landed there and to me, because I think at that time I was working in Iraq. So, we land and I'm like, okay, I know where we are. Like, I know this, like this feeling and this, the chaos and all the things. But my friends, I think it was a little jarring for them. I don't think they quite expected it. And I don't think they had ever experienced anything like that before. And I was just like, oh, yeah. I felt like I felt like it was very similar to a lot of the conditions I was already living in. So I
Yeah, so
noticed that was very
oh,
poignant to me.
and I think that's a real benefit because I've been to a couple of countries in the Middle East, and I'm just using this as an example. I mean, and I come from a very small town as well. So when you land, you're bombarded. Every sense in you is bombarded with this organized chaos, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. And because you're so overwhelmed, you sort of either put up defenses or you don't get to enjoy a place the same because you're on edge of it. Do you have any tips to sort of alleviate those fears or ways to manage them?
I think, first of all, just knowing that that's normal and nothing has gone wrong. You're not wrong. Nothing has gone wrong. It's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's a normal response that as you said, your senses are overwhelmed. It's different. It's changed. So that makes sense that you're having this response. So just be compassionate with yourself. Don't judge yourself. Tell yourself you're wrong, whatever. And I would, just take it slow and ease into it. I know for myself that now I enjoy these types of trips and I look for them on purpose, but it wasn't always the case. And I will tell you, I mean, and again, this is going back a number of years ago, I went to do some research in Mozambique, and I landed in Maputo. I had nobody to greet me. I had nothing, and I landed up at this hotel and I was completely overwhelmed. And I will tell you, I don't think I left the hotel room for 2 days, or not the hotel, but the hotel, like I was sort of just, and it took me a while to sort of get the nerve to venture out and try and find things and whatnot. So it's okay. And just take your time and take it step by step. You need to be aware that your brain, like that primitive part of your brain, is on high alert, right? You're in that fight or flight, and your brain is going to try and protect you. And so you just want to be aware that this is going on, and also take it with a grain of salt, right? Your brain is trying to keep you alive. It's probably not necessary. So just being aware that there's going to be fear, and most likely, do your research, organize. You can organize now so many tours and trips and things where you don't have to be completely on your own. Just try and make yourself comfortable, but don't necessarily believe everything that you're thinking, and that this is a big danger sign flashing at you.
I know, and I've sort of touched on this with a couple of other episodes that, there's so much, we've got so much knowledge at our fingertips now. Like, we can research and look up everywhere, but sometimes that ends up quite overwhelming because we end up with too much information. And sometimes we can go down a rabbit hole of negative stuff as well. We end up reading stories about all the bad situations or, scams and all those sorts of things. So it sort of overrides, and it takes over the joy that we might have from the trip. So that exacerbates that anxiety as well. So it's a good idea to be prepared, as you said, and realize and acknowledge these things. But yeah, take it with a grain of salt as well. I think that's a real good tip, that we sort of need to balance it. I would agree. Yeah. So with that, which will sort of bring us into the next thing, we briefly touched on this when I talked to you before about emotional resilience. So I'm a strong advocate how travel can be used as a personal growth tool in that. And I know from myself, it's built my own self-esteem and confidence. But I think emotional resilience is a really good point. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, I think, we are not taught necessarily how to be and allow with our emotions. And so just like we can allow the fear to overwhelm us, we can allow any emotion to take over, and we are at the effect of it instead of managing it and building our ability to handle any emotion, and then to ultimately create any emotion that we might want or need. So it's taking the time to learn that emotions are just vibrations in our body. They're not going to hurt us. They're not going to kill us. We can survive. Most of them will just pass through us in 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and then let it go. But because we're not taught how to be and allow with these emotions, what we land up doing is reacting, right? Which looks like slamming doors, yelling, all the things, stomping off. Or we are resisting, which if you think of a beach ball, holding a beach ball underwater, like trying not to feel it, pushing it away, telling yourself you shouldn't be feeling this way. Or we are numbing and buffering. So it could be anything from anything you do in excess that sort of has a net negative effect. So that might look like drinking a bottle of wine, or eating a bag of chips, or a pint of ice cream, or shopping, spending money on things you don't really need, or that you don't, money that you don't have. Could be gambling. It could be, even over exercising or overworking, all in an attempt not to feel what's going on, but trying to numb it and not feel it. But ideally, what we want to do is learn how to just sit with it, name it, be aware of what's going on, and then allow it to be there. And sometimes, obviously, you don't need to process every single emotion. But if you're feeling frustration or doubt or fear or even annoyance or anger, you want to be able to just sit with that and breathe into it and allow it to be there. It's almost like a little meditation where you're just sitting and just, identifying where is it in your body, and then sitting with it, bring it, and just allowing it to be there. And you will feel things, start to unwind and start to dissipate and move through you. And then ultimately what we want to do is learn how to generate our own emotions. And it's understanding that what we're thinking is directly related to how we're feeling. Every thought has a feeling. Most of the time we're not aware of this because we're thinking 60,000 thoughts per day. But there are certain thoughts, that we think over and over and over again that we want to be aware of, and what the emotion is that they're generating. And then, as I said, ideally, we're thinking intentionally, we're choosing thoughts that then create a corresponding emotion, whether it's courage, determination, motivation, and then we're able to take that action. So when we go to travel, we want to understand that that fear is going to come up, the doubt, maybe the confusion, whatever it is. It's linked to a thought. Okay, let's just feel it, process it through. Nothing has gone wrong, right? It's just a part of our human experience. It makes sense if you're going somewhere new, if you're doing something different, that you experience that fear. But if you can allow it, process it through, and then decide, you know what? I'm going to think instead, I can figure this out. Or, whatever happens, I can solve for it and I can get help, or I'll be okay, or I'm safe. And then generating that emotion of courage, determination, calm, whatever it is. That emotional resilience really is just learning that you can be with your emotions, you can allow them, you can process them through in a way that is positive and helpful for you, and that nothing has gone wrong, right? There are no right or wrong, good or bad emotions. It's all a part of the human experience. It really comes down to how we manage them. And ultimately what you want to do is get to that place where you can generate the emotions that you need to take the action that you want. And that's the secret. It's a secret to life. If you can think intentionally, generate that emotion, then you're taking the action you want. And it doesn't matter whether it's traveling somewhere new or running a marathon or writing a book or a blog post or whatever it is that you ultimately want to do. That's how you get yourself there.
Yeah, I love that. And it sort of leads me on to a next question I want to ask you that sort of you might have some advice on, because I've experienced this myself and I've seen it with women that come on my trips. If you go, certain countries are a lot different, and some are worse than others, but when you see impoverished areas or people begging or people maimed on the streets and stuff like that, I get quite a sense of overwhelm. I manage it a little bit better now because I'm more used to it. And I know I expect it in some places, but for some people, they've never experienced poverty or, hardship like that before, in their face. And especially when you have children or people coming up and begging or asking for money, what tips do you have to help people manage that? Because one, it's not always a good idea to give them money in certain situations, and how to manage your own emotional overwhelm, because I feel it and I see it in other people. So do you have any suggestions around that?
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of similar to the way you would manage your fear, in that understanding that this is a normal response. It is overwhelming. It makes sense that you're feeling overwhelmed and that you're having this reaction. You're human. So just allowing yourself to have that experience, right? Because we're not going to try and sugarcoat it. We're not going to try and put a positive spin on it. It's okay if you're feeling sad or upset or frustrated, whatever the emotion that comes up. And I think, just being aware of what you're feeling and allowing it. Again, you don't need to react to it. You don't need to try and resist it. You can just allow it. And if you can process it, again, sitting for a few minutes and just sitting with that and allowing it and saying, this makes sense. This is part of my human experience. If you don't, it can be just as I want to say simple, but, just again, being aware of what you're feeling and naming it and carrying it with you. Like, just allow it to be there. Like, it's sort of like a purse or a bag that you're carrying with you. It's your sadness, it's your disappointment, it's your frustration, whatever it is. Just allow that until you have some time to process that. It can also be helpful to journal, right? Or to talk to somebody about it. But I think my key tip would just be, nothing has gone wrong here. Whatever you're feeling makes sense, but don't make yourself wrong for it. Don't try to resist it. Just allow it to be there. I think of it, it's all a part of our experience. And if you can take something from this and decide that, you want to make a donation or you want to do something about it, if it somehow touches you and has an impact, I think follow that impulse and do that, because that can also be important. We want to take our experiences and use them if there's something you can do, whether it's in that moment or down the road, whatever it is, but allow it to touch you, allow it to change you, allow it to have that impact. And this is a part of your human experience.
Yeah, and part of the journey. And that's the whole point. Travel isn't always, cocktails and lovely pools. There's good, bad, and ugly. And there's some uncomfortable moments, and I think what you touched on about actually embracing that. And I think this relates, I'm a real advocate also for slow travel. And I think if you give what you said about sitting in it, if you have enough time to even take yourself back to your hotel room and just sit with it for a while, and that's where I really believe, building an itinerary that allows downtime for emotional, and your own resilience and just rest and relaxation, because, when we're traveling, we want to go out and we want to see everything we possibly can and jam in as much as we possibly can. But if you get so tired and overwhelmed and either, emotionally stressed and that then you don't want to come out of your hotel room, you're sort of not going to get the most of your adventure, are you?
Right. Yes. And you want to have a lot of compassion. Have compassion for yourself, have compassion for others, and yes, just take care of yourself. And
if you had what would be your best advice for someone taking the first step into solo female travel to overcome, I know you've touched on it sort of briefly, but a top tip to overcome any anxieties and fears to get them their foot out the door, so to speak, to take that first step?
Well, I think it goes back to having a reason why you want to travel and do this in the first place, and be clear, why you're doing this. One of the things that started me on my journey was, and this is again going back many years, but when I was in high school, I was planning to do a backpacking trip around Europe. I was 19 at the time, and I was going to go with my best friend, and she landed up pulling out. And so I had to make that decision at that time whether I was going to go ahead or not. And to me, the option was either I'm going or I'm staying home. Well, of course I'm going to go. I'm going by I guess it was, if I was going to go by myself or stay home, I was going to go by myself. That was it. I definitely was not going to stay home. Knowing that, was enough to motivate me to get me out the door and get over that fear that I was not going to stay home. And I always encourage people that if you have an option to go by yourself or stay home, if you don't have somebody to go with, the answer is always go. Always just go. But be clear about where you're going and why you want to go, and that reason. Having that and just reminding yourself of that can help to center you again and give you some of that courage to get over it, the fear and the doubt.
100%. And I think the main thing is having that commitment. You've really got to commit and be 100%, back yourself 100%. I think that's really, really important. And, there are going to be obstacles, there always is in whatever we do in life. But I think, just committing to your decision. And I think we sort of touched on it in a previous conversation also, that you don't also have to travel 1,000 miles or in a plane to go and have your first solo adventure too. You can do that closer to home. So, yes. What are some ideas about, doing that, doing something closer to home?
Exactly. I think that's a great way to sort of build up that muscle and some of that comfort level. And just, even if it's driving 2 hours and spending time alone in an Airbnb or in a hotel, going to visit, whatever it is that, is somewhat out of your comfort zone, but not, has you shaking in your boots, so to speak. Right? It pushes you a little bit, and that's good enough to start. I think you just, take small steps, and that's okay, and build up that muscle, build up that that strength and that resilience and your courage. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's no rush, there's no time frame, there's no right or wrong way to do this. Again, it goes back to knowing that if the fear's there, if the doubt's there, that's okay. Nothing has gone wrong. Again, it's your brain trying to protect you. So, expect the fear, expect the doubt, push yourself a little bit, and also have that self-trust in yourself that if something does go wrong, or and you get a little lost, or something, plans don't quite work out the way you had hoped, just know that you can problem solve. You can figure this out. You're smart, you're capable, you're experienced in other areas, right? We all have problem solving skills at different levels, but you can figure this out, and just trust in yourself that you can do that.
I love that. And I think that's a key thing, trust in yourself, and remember that you're more capable than what you think. Many women at home, they're juggling multiple jobs, home and family, and then they don't think they have the tools or the confidence to go and do something like travel, but they already have all the tools. It's just transferring them.
It's absolutely true. And I think, unfortunately, we are somewhat socialized and programmed, and we get all this messaging that maybe we're not as capable, we're not as strong, we're not as smart. I mean, God, if you watch any of the movies or anything from the ease of 90s, right? I mean, you would think that we're completely helpless. I saw there was something from Reese Witherspoon saying in all the movies she's ever done or that she's watched, there's always a scene where something goes wrong and the woman asks the man, what do we do next? It's just everywhere, permeated everywhere in our culture and our psyches. So, but the truth is we're smart, we're capable, we're skilled, we're experienced. Maybe travel is something new and different for you, but I guarantee you that there's some other area in your life where you have done things that other people would be amazed and proud and excited about. So you can figure this out.
I love that. And, that's a good way sort of to wrap this episode up, is you can figure it out. You are capable. To take time, and it's just all part of, like you mentioned, the human journey. And I love that, and I think that's such an important part of travel. It is part of the human journey. You see other people, how they live, you get good perspective. I think, just before we leave, has that changed your perspective, seeing probably the worst of humanity in some ways? Has it, and I know you probably get asked it a lot, but has it changed your perspective, or given you I shouldn't say changed your perspective, has it given you a perspective that there is really good in humanity as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you're doing good.
But the people that I've met all over the world have been so extraordinarily kind and generous. I mean, I'm overwhelmed all the time, especially when I have that opportunity to live within a community and spend some time there and get to know the people. In Lebanon, for instance, I mean, always working with the national team there, or living in like a small village with everyone around. I mean, people went out of their way to help me. And if I needed anything, or I got lost, or couldn't find something, or got sick, they were all there to help. So, sometimes you look collectively at an organ, or at a culture, or at a community, or at a religion, or at a country, and you sort of think, but when you really get down to that personal level, one to one, I mean, people have been truly, truly amazing, and I'm overwhelmed all the time. So it is very reassuring, and I try to remind myself of that when I see some of these things happening in the news or hear about something. I think, there are a lot of good people out there, and there are a lot of people who are doing good.
We don't hear about that as much. That's the
No,
problem.
exactly, right? It doesn't make the news. It's
No.
not good copy. So
We need a good news channel that only shares good news. It would change people's lives.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but I mean, and that's one of the things I keep thinking about whenever I travel. People will help, people will be kind, people are extremely generous. So they're out there, they exist for sure.
And I can back that up too. I've met some amazing people traveling, and they are more than generous and welcoming and understanding, and I think that's across the board in most places, especially if, and I think the other reason is as long as you come across that way as well, like calls to like. So if you're open and generous and kind and courteous and polite, that will be reciprocated.
True. Yes, I agree.
Awesome. So we just like to end this. My God, I didn't even start the episode with our signature question, which I'll end up asking you. I just was so excited to get into this round. So that's okay. So our question from our previous guest to you, which I thought was quite good, and actually not a bad way to end this one. If you could travel the world during a different era, which decade would you choose and why?
I was thinking about this, and I sort of came up with like 1900s, sort of, I know it's not one decade, but I was sort of looking at like the next to like 1920. And I also decided I wanted to be in the Middle East. And I sort of wanted to see, especially with some of the archaeology and some of the things, the work that was going on there. And I was looking at Gertrude Bell and
yes, she was amazing. Yeah.
Right? Yes. And that era and some of the work, Howard Carter finding Tutankhamun and all those things, the Valley of the Kings. And that would be my career. If I wasn't, doing what I was doing now, or if I had to do it all over again, I would be an Egyptologist and I would be out there digging with them.
That's very cool. And so carry on to the next one. What is your question for our next guest coming up?
Right. So if you had the opportunity to design a round the world trip ticket with a theme, what theme would you choose? And I was thinking it could be food or art or music or history, whatever the theme might be. And which destinations would you choose for the tickets?
And I can't wait to pass that on. And then lastly, we have just our quick fire round. I'm just going to throw just a few questions at you. So just whatever's off the top of your head, there's nothing too serious. So the first one is, do you have any travel rituals?
I always like to do either like one of those big bus, like the open bus tours, or like some sort of walking tour when I first arrive. Just to get sort of the lay of the land and explore a little bit. And usually, like, I that's one of the first things I do when I arrive somewhere.
Love that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of walking tours as well. What is your favorite travel app?
I've always been really bad with travel apps because I will tell you, when I was in Lebanon and I was traveling, I had a work phone and I wasn't able to use the data or call out, right? So I couldn't really sort of use it when I was there, whatnot. I guess I could use it with it. Anyway, so that's that. But, I'm always using sort of booking.com actually as an app because that's how I booked like all of my accommodation and all of my hotels. So if I had like sort of one site that was key for keeping me organized and finding everything where I was going to go, it would probably be booking.com.
It's fine. I use it too. So it's just good for searching places. Again, because otherwise you just get overwhelmed when you start looking.
Yes.
Most unexpected item in your travel bag?
I don't know if this is unexpected, but I always need a good magnifying mirror. I don't know more for that, yes, because I can't see anymore, so I won't do much.
I've seen that before, so you're not alone.
Yeah, I won't. I don't like to travel with it. That's one of my key staples. You need good eyebrows,
and you can also use it if in an emergency if you need to create a fire too. So
there you go. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And can you just tell the listeners where they can find you also? Because I know you've got an amazing podcast, this Daring Adventure, which I think is very cool, and your website. So where can they find you?
Yeah. So this Daring Adventure comes out every Thursday, and you can I have my website, which is thisdaringadventure.com, but it's also on all the major streaming platforms, so Apple, Spotify, what have you. So you can find me there. My website is tristaguertin.com. So you get that. Yeah. And then on Instagram, you can find me. I'm very active on Instagram. So I'm Trista V Guertin there. So that's a good place to keep up with me and get some great resources. Okay.
Yeah, so they can find you down there. I just want to
Great.
thank you again, and I really appreciate your time and the stories and expertise you have shared. So it's just been wonderful having you here.
Well, thank you, Gina. It's been a pleasure to be here, and it's been a lot of fun to talk with you. So thank you.
So don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And remember, it's never too late to unleash your wanderlust as well.
Thanks for listening. Please share the love by liking, commenting, or subscribing, or join us in our Facebook community.